Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to the Liverpool Daily News Stream. Be sure to get involved in the comments as we go, and we'll pick out and react to some of the best ones. I'm Tom Greaves, joined by James Martin to look ahead to tonight's match. The Reds face Napoli in their final game of the group stage as Ibrahima Konate looks set to make his return to football for Liverpool following an injury-plagued season. James, a welcome return into that back line, surely because we haven't been up to scratch recently.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a tricky period. Gomez has sort of had that opportunity to kind of prove himself next to Van Dijk, and you'd have to say he probably hasn't. There's been games where he's been very impressive. I mean, Manchester City springs to mind, but equally, there's been moments where lapses have cost him and cost the team. I mean, Leeds obviously being the most glaring example, but yeah, it's an odd one because I mean, we all know he wants to be a centre back, but you'd have to say over the last, well, certainly over this season, but going back further to sort of the back end of last season as well, you'd probably say his best performances have come at right back. And meanwhile, Trent, who's looked almost untouchable at right back for many, many years, has maybe looked a bit vulnerable there. So yeah, it's all changed in terms of how we're sort of perceiving those battles at right back and at centre back, respectively. But yeah, Konate will be a major boost. He's obviously an out-and-out centre-back, and he's probably looked the most secure. I mean, we haven't seen much of him at all this season. Of course, he had, I think Rangers and then a brief cameo at Arsenal, but that's about it because of the injuries. But yeah, he looks really safe when he plays. It's, again, like Gomez. I mean, he's even younger than Gomez, and he does have that sort of moment of momentary lapse in him, but I think we saw in the Champions League final last season that this is a player who's already absolutely ready for the biggest games. He can be relied upon. He has that sort of Van Dijk aura about him. He's physically imposing, but he's also quick across the ground. He's an exceptional player. The only downside with him really is his sort of injury past. His first season at Liverpool was pretty much clear, no worries. But when we did first sign him, people were raising that injury record at Leipzig. So I suppose that's the only worry, but we've played it cautious. He's taken his time coming back into the team, even though we've been in the midst of this kind of crisis, which I think is sensible. There's no point worsening the crisis by getting him injured for another couple of months. But yeah, it sounds like he's properly ready to go now, and that will certainly be a boost.
Do you think the way that our backline has been playing recently, do you think as much as anything, it could just be trying to get a fresh face into the back just to shore it up a little bit, change it up, see how we play differently along that back line? I think as Konate has shown so far for Liverpool, he is a fantastic player, but I don't think on any level he's not on a different planet to the likes of, say, Matip or something. I just think for me personally, I think just getting another face in there and just seeing if we can take it with it and see how it works. Do you think Jurgen Klopp would be looking at it in the same way?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it's sort of counterintuitive in terms of, received wisdom about defence, where everyone says a settled back line is the way forward. But, when your settled back line is so leaky, I think you're right that, yeah, change can be important in and of itself, regardless of who's coming in. I mean, I agree with you. I don't necessarily think Konate is better than Matip just yet. I think he's well on his way. And obviously Matip is at an age where maybe that sort of conversation about phasing out needs to happen at some point in the not too distant future. But yeah, in terms of their actual levels, Matip brings extra elements to the table. We all know about his sort of strides out from the back. And I think with Gomez in for Matip in recent weeks, we've seen how much that's been missed actually in terms of the build-up play. I think we've looked even more turgid without Matip. But yeah, the fact is that sometimes you do just need to mix things up a bit. Konate gives another option. I mean, to again go back to the Champions League final, Matip was fit for that, but Klopp went with Konate just to sort of meet the needs of the occasion in terms of the profile of players he was coming up against. I mean, obviously the result didn't go our way, but I think Konate was one of the best players on the pitch. So that particular decision worked really well. It's nice to have those options. And, options is one thing Liverpool haven't really had in the back line too much this season. So much of the time, the choices have been just out of necessity, who's fit, who's not. So, yeah, I think changing will be nice in and of itself, but also just having that option to change based on the opponents we're playing will be a major boost.
Yeah, Mark Britton has got involved in the comments and he said that Konate and Phillips need to start. Phillips just to get him in the shop window for any possible transfers in January, plus Gomez gets out of the firing line. Who do you think that the manager will go for tonight? It will be interesting to see how he approaches this game, won't it?
Yeah, he said in his pre-match press conference that it wasn't going to be necessarily the occasion for sort of mass rotation. So I think probably that means we won't see Phillips, but I can see the case for him. I mean, as Mark says, shot window, it's a very odd one that he's still at the club, if we're being honest. Liverpool have been playing a dangerous game in terms of preserving his value. That has surely tumbled even from last season when he had sort of impressed in spells. He had that shot window moment, didn't he, against Milan in a similar kind of situation. So, yeah, I mean, I can see the appeal of sticking him out there and hoping he impresses again, but that I don't think it's likely. I think we'll probably see Konate, but I think he'll be alongside Van Dijk. I agree to an extent on Gomez as well. I mean, I'd be tempted to maybe stick him at right back, where like I say, I've been quite impressed with him actually this season, but certainly take him out of the firing line down the middle. So yeah, that's probably what I think Klopp will do. But yeah, I mean, I've seen someone else in the comments suggest Ramsey. Klopp doesn't seem like he wants to do it, but I could see the case for fairly major rotations because Liverpool need to win by probably 4 goals or 3 goals and scoring at least 5 or something like that if they want to overturn Napoli. That seems unlikely. So it's as close to a dead rubber as you're likely to get. And obviously we're in the middle of a lot of congestion. So if I were Klopp, maybe I'd do things a bit differently. But if I'm trying to guess what the manager's going to do, I'd say still fairly strong. So Konate and Van Dijk.
So if we will go strong, do you think Napoli are a team in form at the minute, aren't they? They've won 10 in Serie A, drawn 2 and lost none, I believe. And so far in the Champions League group, they've won all 5. So it will be a tough challenge, Liverpool, won't it, with a team in form at the minute?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're the dark horses of the season, really. They've got a genuine case to be, one of the best teams in Europe at the minute, which I don't think anyone necessarily expected at the start of the season. They've done really well. They had a bit of a rebuild this summer, and of course the parallels to Liverpool are there in that in terms of what we didn't do. They flushed a fair few big names out. You thought maybe they'll have to rebuild, but they've come back immediately, really, really strong. Quite a young team now as well. Very exciting. Obviously, Kvaratskhelia, whatever his name is, but he's looked extremely lively. So yeah, it's an exciting team to watch. Liverpool will hope it's not too exciting tonight, but it's like you say, they've barely have they lost all season. I'm not sure they have, but
No, I don't think we have now. I'm not sure if they played any domestic competitions yet, but definitely not in the Champions League or the league now.
Yeah, so that tells you the scale of the task, and also tells you why hopes of overturning them for top spot is optimistic to say the least. But yeah, I mean it's a good test for Liverpool. If they can get a result here, hopefully some of the confidence can be salvaged after that horrible result against Leeds.
Yeah, Bruce has got an interesting point in the comments. He says, being a dead rubber, this would be the perfect game to start by Setic. I'm not sure of his name, but yeah, you're relatively right. You need a T in there, but you're right. It would be an opportunity for Liverpool to experiment with new things. I know, obviously, so far this season, we haven't been great, so we basically could experiment any game to see if it works. But with this being, it's essentially a bit of a free hit for Liverpool just to maybe start some of the youngsters or try a change in formation, or it could be like a little bit of playground work with Jurgen Klopp, couldn't it?
Wow, I mean, are there any formations left to try? It feels like every new game at the moment is attempting a new formation. But yeah, certainly there's scope for players to come in, even if it's just on the bench. Like I say, I don't think Klopp's going to go crazy, but yeah, someone like Ramsey, someone like Bajcetic, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them feature. I think maybe they'll come on as substitutes. But yeah, I mean, like you and Bruce are saying there, I mean, it is more or less a free hit. I mean, maybe I'll be eating my words later when we win 4-0 and top the group, and I'd be pleased to be proved wrong in that respect. But yeah, it does look like it's just a chance to try things out against one of Europe's best teams at the moment, which isn't an opportunity that comes along too often. So yeah, it would be a good way of sort of integrating a couple of those players a little bit more. I agree. Bajcetic has been very impressive when we've seen him. And that sort of becomes more relevant when you look at the form of Fabinho and to a certain extent Henderson. So you look at someone who can play in that deeper midfield role, and you think, well, okay, what's to lose, really. Certainly in a game like this, just chuck them in, see how they do. But equally, you do have to think about protecting these players. How useful is it going to be to put out a really weak team, watch them get absolutely torn apart by one of the best teams in Europe, and then what have they really learned from that? It's hard to say. So it's a tightrope, but I certainly like to see a couple of hand-picked sort of favourites from that academy setup get a bit of a look in at some point.
As you say, obviously Liverpool do have to win by 4 goals if they want to top the group. But how do you see Liverpool approaching the game? Do you think we could actually do with a bit of a statement performance and go for it, or do you think we just need to not overexert ourselves and be cautious of injuries? Because we saw a couple of years ago playing Midtjylland that Diogo Jota got put out for quite a lengthy period, I think it was at the time. So if anything like that was to happen, do you think you can just see Liverpool feeling out the game? If we get an early goal, maybe we'll change our approach and kind of go for it then? Or how do you think we'll set up?
I think we'll probably go for it from the off, to be honest. Like you say, we're sort of in need of that statement performance. Momentum is such a sort of elusive concept, particularly this season, but we're in dire need of some of it from somewhere. And, even if you can rationalise it and say, look, we were conserving energy, we were putting out young players, if we're on the end of another heavy defeat here, it's just going to absolutely crush morale even more than it's already been down. So, yeah, I think Klopp's going to go out from the first whistle, try and get a win under his belt and try and sort of once again start from square one in terms of getting things going, getting things moving in the right direction. And I think that's probably the right approach. If you're suddenly looking at two losses on the bounce, 3 losses in 4, that's even more concerning than it is now. And it'll be tough to avoid against a good team, but you have to remember it's more or less a dead rubber for Napoli as well. So they may be potentially doing the same sort of thing as Liverpool in terms of going semi-strong, but maybe taking a couple of players out the firing line as well. So it should be quite a different game to the first, well, not the first leg, but the return fixture. We'll certainly hope it'll be different. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to see how both sides approach it. But I think certainly the only way Klopp knows it is trying to go all out to win.
Okay, well, I think we will leave it there. Let's hope if the Reds do decide to go for it, then it is a comfortable win for Liverpool. Thanks for everyone for jumping in the stream and watching. Make sure that you keep up to date with all the Liverpool content over liverpool.com and the Liverpool Echo page. We will be covering the match here tonight, so come back for the press conferences and all the match reaction after the game. Thanks for watching.